You've reached the point where the phrase, "I'm fine," has become a reflex. A script you recite before your brain even has a chance to check if it's true. You say it at the grocery store. You say it to your partner in the kitchen. And you say it to the reflection in the mirror when the house is finally quiet. But lately, that phrase feels less like a shield and more like a weight. You feel a strange, hollow exhaustion that sleep doesn't seem to touch. It's as if you are playing a character in a movie of your own life, watching yourself perform the role of a functional, put-together human being, while the real you is trapped behind a thick sheet of glass. You aren't necessarily sad, and you aren't in a crisis, but you are fading. There is a specific psychological reason why this performance is draining the color out of your world, and it isn't because you are weak or dishonest. In fact, your brain thinks it is saving you. To understand why the silence is so heavy, we have to look at what is happening beneath the surface of that fine exterior, because the cost of pretending is much higher than you think. Think about the last time someone asked how you were doing. Maybe you felt a brief surge of something: frustration, fatigue, or a longing to be seen, but in less than a second, you suppressed it. You smiled, tilted your head just the right way, and gave the expected answer. This isn't just a social habit. It is a complex internal negotiation. When you pretend you're fine, you are engaging in what psychologists call emotional labor. You are using your limited cognitive resources to regulate your outward expression while simultaneously stifling your inner experience. This creates a state of internal dissonance, a friction between who you are and what you show. Over time, this friction wears down your identity. You start to lose the ability to distinguish between your genuine feelings and the mask you wear for the world. You might find yourself snapping at small things: a dropped spoon, a slow internet connection, because the energy required to keep the fine mask in place has left you with zero emotional margin. You feel lonely, even when you are surrounded by people who love you. This is the great disconnect. You are physically present, but emotionally, you are in hiding. And when you hide, you cannot be reached. You might think you are protecting your relationships by not being a burden, but you are actually building a wall that prevents true intimacy from breathing. The more you pretend, the more your brain begins to categorize your true self as a threat to your social safety. If this sounds like your life, I want you to consider a different perspective. You are not a liar, and you are not broken. What you are experiencing is a highly sophisticated survival adaptation. At some point in your history, showing your true emotional state felt dangerous or unproductive. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where your needs were secondary to others, or where being strong was the only way to earn praise. Your brain, in its infinite wisdom, learned that the safest path was to become invisible through competence. If you are always fine, you are never a problem. If you are never a problem, you are never rejected. This is an evolutionary strategy called social masking. It is a way of maintaining your place in the tribe by ensuring you don't create friction. The problem is that while this strategy works for survival, it is catastrophic for thriving. Your brain is using a software program designed for a crisis to manage your everyday life. It is like running a marathon in a suit of armor. It protects you from arrows, but it makes every step an agonizing effort. You aren't failing at life. You are just overprotected. To understand the mechanics of this weight, we have to look at the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. The amygdala is your brain's alarm system, scanning for threats. When you feel an unacceptable emotion like grief, exhaustion, or resentment, the amygdala flags it as a risk to your social standing. In response, your prefrontal cortex, the logical commander, steps in to suppress that emotion. This process is known as expressive suppression. Research in behavioral psychology shows that when we suppress our emotions, our sympathetic nervous system actually stays in a state of high arousal. Even though you look calm on the outside, your heart rate is elevated, and your stress hormones like cortisol are circulating at higher levels. Imagine your mind is a pressure cooker. The steam inside is your genuine emotion. Pretending you're fine is like holding the lid down with your bare hands while turning the heat up. The steam doesn't disappear, it just becomes more volatile. Eventually, that pressure has to go somewhere. It often manifests as leaking. The emotion comes out in ways you can't control, like physical aches, chronic fatigue, or sudden outbursts of irritability. There is a simple mental model for this called the beach ball effect. Try to submerge an inflated beach ball under the water in a swimming pool. It takes constant physical effort to keep it down. The moment you lose focus or get tired, the ball rockets to the surface with chaotic force, splashing everything around it. Your emotions are that beach ball. The fine you project is the surface of the water, still, calm, and deceptive. The energy you spend holding that ball down is what is making you so tired. So, how do we stop holding the ball down without letting it hit us in the face? The shift requires a psychological framework that prioritizes integrated honesty over performative strength. The first step is what psychologists call affect labeling. This is the practice of simply naming the emotion you are feeling, even if you only say it to yourself. When you label an emotion, you shift the brain's activity from the reactive amygdala to the analytical prefrontal cortex. Instead of saying, "I'm fine," try saying, "I am feeling overwhelmed right now." You don't have to say it to the world, you just have to say it to the air. In the brain, this act of naming acts like a pressure release valve. It reduces the physiological arousal and makes the emotion feel like a data point rather than a threat. A real-life example of this is the car door moment. When you get home from work and you're sitting in the car for 5 minutes before going inside, don't just scroll on your phone. Take those 5 minutes to name 3 things you actually felt today. I felt ignored in that meeting. I felt rushed at lunch. I felt tired at 3 p.m. By doing this, you are teaching your brain that these feelings are allowed to exist without destroying your safety. The second step is the practice of strategic vulnerability. Most people think vulnerability is a total all or nothing disclosure. They fear that if they stop saying they are fine, they will have to tell everyone their darkest secrets. But in psychology, we use the incremental disclosure model. You don't have to open the floodgates. You just have to crack the door. Instead of telling a friend, "I'm fine," when you're actually struggling, try a low-stakes truth. Say something like, "Honestly, I've had a pretty draining day, so I'm a bit quiet tonight." This works because it sets a realistic boundary. It alerts the other person to your state without making you feel overexposed. It prevents the social burnout that happens when you try to match someone else's high energy when your battery is at 5%. When you give a low-stakes truth, your brain learns that you can be not fine and still be accepted. The third step is cognitive reframing of the burden myth. The biggest reason we pretend is the fear of being a burden to others. We think that by hiding our struggles, we are being kind. But personality theory suggests that genuine connection is built on a foundation of reciprocal need. When you never show your needs, you are actually denying the people who love you the opportunity to care for you. You are keeping the relationship one-dimensional. Think of a bridge. A bridge that only allows traffic to move in one direction is eventually going to cause a jam. For a relationship to be stable, there must be a two-way flow of support. When you say, "I'm fine," when you aren't, you are effectively closing your lane of the bridge. The real-life application here is the help request. Ask for something small and functional when you are feeling the weight. "I'm feeling a bit stretched today. Could you handle dinner?" This isn't just about the dinner. It's about training your nervous system to accept support. It breaks the cycle of hyper-independence that keeps you isolated. The fourth step is the transition from suppression to compassionate observation. Instead of fighting the not fine feelings, you simply observe them as if you were a scientist watching a storm. In neuroscience, this is related to the concept of decentering. You learn to realize that you have a feeling, but you are not the feeling. When the weight of pretending feels heavy, stop and visualize the internal weather report. You might say, "There is a cloud of exhaustion over the landscape of my mind today." Notice how different that feels from "I am exhausted." One is a state of being. The other is a temporary environment. This mental model allows you to stop being the person who has to fix the weather and instead become the person who simply waits for it to pass. When you stop trying to control the internal weather, you free up a massive amount of cognitive energy. That energy can then be used for actual recovery instead of more pretending. If we were to take all of these concepts and distill them into one simple model, it would be the oxygen mask principle. You've heard it on every flight. Put your own mask on before assisting others. Pretending you are fine is the equivalent of trying to help everyone else with their masks while you are slowly suffocating. You think you are being a hero, but you are actually becoming a liability. A person who is suffocating cannot lead, cannot love deeply, and cannot think clearly. By acknowledging your true state, you are reaching for the oxygen. The weight you feel isn't the weight of your problems. It is the weight of the mask. When you take the mask off, the air might feel cold at first. It might feel terrifying to let the world see the tired, messy, or uncertain version of you, but you will find that you can finally breathe. And a person who can breathe is much more capable of handling the world than a person who is perfectly composed but gasping for air. The silence of pretending is a lonely place to live. It creates a life that looks good on paper but feels empty in the heart. You have spent so much time making sure everyone else is comfortable that you have forgotten that you are allowed to occupy space too. You don't owe the world a fine version of yourself. You don't have to be a finished product to be worthy of belonging. The people who truly matter in your life don't want the polished statue of you. They want the living, breathing, sometimes struggling human being. Tonight, when the sun goes down and the expectations of the day fade away, I want you to sit with yourself for a moment. Don't try to fix anything. Don't try to plan for tomorrow. Just put down the weight. Whisper the truth to the empty room. I am not fine, and that is okay. Saying it doesn't make it permanent. It just makes it real. And the moment it becomes real is the moment it starts to get lighter. You have been carrying the world on your shoulders for a long time. It's time to let the world carry you for a while. You are not failing. You are just human, and being human is more than enough. The next time someone asks how you are, remember that you don't have to give them a performance. You can just give them a piece of the truth, because the truth is the only thing that will ever set you free from the weight of being fine. I want you to think about one person in your life who has earned your trust. What would happen if you gave them just 10% more of the truth next time you spoke? Would the world end, or would you finally feel seen? Maybe that's the only step you need to take today.